No.
Did you post anything about it?
Yeah, but whatever. This is where the real OGs are. We'll get there. Is that it? Is this what I need? Yeah. Ooh. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the episode 29 of Josh Says Mean Things. We're almost at 30. Pretty exciting. This journey started over 2 years ago. I know. Crazy. We're here live at the Three-Legged Goat. Thanks for everybody showing up in person. We have some crew here. I didn't bring an audience camera. Didn't feel like it. And it caused glitches last time, so we're not going to do it, but maybe next time. But yeah, we're set up. We're watching on the TV right above our heads, and we're having a good time. We have, I don't know, like 12, 13 submissions. Some of them, I don't know. I did a little bit probably to everyone. I took everyone into Lightroom and just did a little bit to it. So I hope y'all enjoy kind of what we have to say. Come back and watch for your own photos. I know that some of y'all are in like other countries watching right now. Mark, shout out. You and Jessica, awesome. Living that life out there. So yeah, let's take a look at what we got. All right. Can y'all see that okay? Does that show up on the stream all right? Let's see. Yes, it does. Awesome. Cool. So this first photo is from Mr. Dragonlingo himself, Ron. He said this was taken with his older camera. He says it's from a few years ago. It's taken with a 50D. Now, right away, I'm kind of partial to that. The 50D was kind of the camera that got a Zolux off the ground. I upgraded from my Canon Rebel XTI into a Canon 50D, and I thought I was ready to go. It powered a lot of my first 2 years of shoots. So 50D has a very special. I actually never sold it. It's still up on a shelf because it was the camera that started as Zolux. He said he was kind of going for a painterly feel. If you notice, right, it's kind of a little jaggedy there, but I like the orientation of this. I don't know if that was the original. I don't know if it was. If you hit Control bracket, you can rotate. So I don't know if it was that originally, or if it was. I don't know. I don't know what the original one, but this is how he sent it to me, so that's how we're going to talk about it. To me, it looks like the airplane the Joker would fly, because it looks like it has the big question mark, or the Riddler, I guess. Right, it has the big question mark. But I think this is a very inventive way of presenting this photo. We're not used to seeing an airplane flying straight down. So I really dig it. I think the crop here works really well to keep the action right in the center, with just this snake-looking smoke behind, and then it's almost like the medical staff. What's that called? The caduceus, right? Something like that? No? Caduceus. There we go. And so I kind of dig it, right? It looks graphic. If you squint your eyes, you wouldn't even see that there was a plane, and it's still interesting. So good job, right? If we hit I, we can see I've taken with the 7200. It's 70 mil, so it had to be somewhat close or pretty cropped, but I just like that it's a segment and presented in a way that isn't normally presented. We'll see one of Steven's airplane photos here in a little bit, and a little bit more traditional approach, but just kind of a cool way to do this. So very cool. All right, this is from Chris Cena. Chris had to do a little humble brag. She's like, I really like this photo from when I was in France. And I said, cool, send me the raw. She goes, I forgot. I was so in awe of my trip. I just shot everything in JPEG. So yeah, I know. She beat herself up a little bit too, but I think the things that work here is we have 3 silhouetted subjects, right? We have a human down here, boat, bird. So those are our 3 subjects, and then a sunset. I will say that a lot of photos are sunsets looking for a foreground. Right, this is that pretty time of day. You have some silhouette. To me, though, the silhouette maybe is a little harsh just because there's all this data that we don't see anything into here, right in the center of that horizon. I think if it was just the boat and just the person on the water, I think the silhouette would work. But then trying to combine the silhouette with a sunset, I think it's a little bit too much black for the entirety of the frame. And so that's kind of what I like the person as a center. I wish the bird was a little bit further to the right and the boat a little bit further to the left to create more of a triangular shape in between the 3 foreground subjects. So just something to think about. Obviously, when you come upon a scene, you can't tell the boat to back up, especially a sailboat. They're kind of at the whims of sails. So I took this one. She told me to take a stab at it and see what we could do. And so let's see. So I boosted the shadows primarily. So let me flip back and forth real quick so you can see. So there was the original, and then here's my stab at it as it flips over. So what did I do? Shadows boosted. That's really the only big control, except for we did two things. So one of the new abilities in Lightroom is select sky, and so that's what this first one is. It's this sky. If I hit show overlay, you can see what it did there, and this is just a rough. I didn't fine tune it at all, but I darkened the sky just a little bit, half a stop, and I gave it a little bit of dehaze, and I boosted the saturation. So that's what's happening to the sky here. And then I duplicate it, I invert it, and so then this one gives me the opposite of my sky. In this case, it's my foreground. And so the big thing that I did, I took those temperatures and I cooled them down. So all of my shadows, I went minus 36 in temp. I darkened it a little bit. I brought my highlights down and I boosted my shadows even more. So shadows in totality got 100% boost in the shadows. But what this does is now that we have a contrast in the warm tones of the sunset and then the blue tones of the water and the shadows. And so right away that kind of makes it a little bit more engaging, right? So much of photography is finding contrast. And so with color, having warm and cool and amplifying those out even more is going to make it a little bit more appealing to the viewer. It also, by boosting those shadows, we get a little more detail here into the foreground. Or I guess it's really the middle ground, but I try to leave the silhouettes as silhouettes, but you know, they're not pure silhouette anymore. If I had the raw, I could have pushed this a little bit further, but I was working off a JPEG, so there's only so much I could do. But just as an idea, with landscapes, that select sky, duplicate, and then invert, and that'll give you an exact flip of whatever that sky that you get first. And then you can work on them separately instead of having to do linear tools or radial tools or brush tools, right? And so it gives you an exact flip on that horizon line. So,
You could use like a gradient for
yeah.
the gradient to get more separation at the bottom.
Yeah. So Jim asked, could you use a gradient? And before the select sky had come about, I absolutely would have used the gradient tools to accomplish that, and then do a little blending and some of that. But with the new select sky, you can really control just the sky, just the foreground, middle ground. So I still use both. I might also come back and use a linear gradient from the top just to darken the top of the sky a little bit more. That's certainly something we can do. The other thing we can do with the new selective tools in Lightroom is you can intersect and add or subtract from them. So I could add a linear gradient inside that same filter to change the control as well. So that's kind of a cool aspect to it, but just something to think about. I've been using Lightroom since version 2, and so I kind of got conditioned to using it in a certain way, and so a lot of this has been for me breaking out of my habits. Oh yeah, I can select subject. Oh yeah, I can select sky. Well, then what do I do with it? And so those tools are just so much they're just so much easier now than they used to be. I wish I had those type of tools and gradients easily in Photoshop. I wish Photoshop had some of Lightroom's ease of use, because Photoshop is the 800-pound gorilla, and you have to wrestle with it every time. Yeah. All right, Mr. Bill. This is from where? Iceland. Okay. I'm very jealous. If we zoom in on this black church, this very stark black and white church, we see all the snow falling. How cold was it?
26, 27.
Positive?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
It
Yeah.
wasn't that cold. It was never that cold.
That's great. So this is just a very stark, serene, right, church somewhere in the middle of nowhere. No power lines. That's nice. Not having to worry about a sunset and this cool snowfall. Taken at 35 mil, 35 prime? Nope. Okay. Oh yeah, got it. At f10, so nice sharpness all the way throughout. It's almost kind of works as a black and white too. If you were to just take the saturation and drop it, right, it's still good. So that's kind of a way I check sometimes. If you make your controls, if you hold Alt when you make your controls, it will give you a mask so you can see what you're doing. it'll give you a layer mask, but a lot of times I'll just drop it into, if you hold Alt whenever you're adjusting, it'll show you that kind of mask feature. But sometimes when I'm just worried about the tonality of the photo, not the color, I'll drop my saturation minus 100, and then make my highlight, shadow, white, and black edits, and then come back and add the color back in, just as a way to adjust for tonality, and not worry about the color part of it right away. So I didn't make a ton of changes, but just something to think about when we're shooting buildings. That change doesn't look very much. I'll flip back and forth. The only thing I did was go to the transform tool, and just hit auto. And so it took those lines from a little bit keystoned to straightened up. The only other change I made, I just did a slight, I don't even know if I did it. Yeah, a slight dehaze, just to bring in some of the detail of this far away corner, just to bring that out just a little bit. It's not even that much. It's just a little bit. If we go back and forth, it doesn't look that different, but just to kind of amplify that mountain range in the back, just to give it a little bit more there in the foreground to see. Only changes I made. Otherwise, I really like this. No other changes for me. I just love the snow falling, that quiet solitude. It's such a difference in what we see where we live, right? Central Texas, right? Ugly cedar trees, power lines, never snow. So there's just kind of a fun, very much not what we normally see. So very peaceful with snow falling. So jealous I wasn't there to shoot this too. All right, this is from Miss Maddie doing some UT seniors, using some atmosphere and some gels. Been teaching her well. She's been coming out to a lot of shoots with us. So I don't know the modifier. I don't know if it was Beauty Dish or if it was more of a straight modifier. I should see if there's comments going. No, Dragon. It was indeed vertical. Very cool, Ron. So Ron says from the plane that was the way it was shot, and that was the way the plane was flying. That's kind of cool. So there's a cute photo, right, of the senior. Very good, right? We have lights in front. We have a light in the back with a pink gel. Aerosol getting sprayed. UT main campus behind. All right, a lot of good things. One of the things I know when I'm using a harder light source like this as a key light, and it's hard because we can see the shadow, right? We can see the definitive shape of the shadow. So we know it was something like a Magnum reflector or a Beauty Dish or something along those lines. If it was a softbox, if it was an umbrella, this chin shadow would not be as defined, right? A full sun day, we have hard shadows. Cloudy day, we have soft shadows. But one of the things I like to do is hide the fact that I was using a flash. See, all of that light spilled onto the foreground here, and that's the area. I want all of my area to look and kind of match that middle section right there. Y'all know about the box zoom? Let's see. So in Lightroom now, you can draw a box and zoom to that. Anyway. Control, yeah, so you can hit Control and then draw an area, and then I'll zoom into that. You can also do Shift and do a scrub. So holding Shift and moving your mouse left and right, it'll give you a scrub zoom as well. So other zoom tools. So I love the pink. I think it's a great offset. I think everything's really good about that. You got a little bit of the tower in the background. Super fun. What did I do to change it? Just a little bit. So a couple things. One, I amped the vibrance up a bunch, but just like we did on the foreground on the landscape earlier, I did the same thing here. So I did select subject, and that gives me my subject, and I just brought it up just a little bit, 0.2, and then I inverted that to give me the background, and then I darkened that in the highlights, right? So you can see those layer masks, you can see the shapes of them, right? And so all we're doing is brightening our subject and darkening our background. Essentially, that's all we're doing. But what that does is it makes our subject pop more off that background, right? And so it gives us a contrast in tonality. You go to the thing that's brighter, you ignore the thing that's darker, right? So that's what we did. The other thing, just a little bit of a positive vignette here in the center, just to brighten it up a little bit. And then a layer mask at a linear layer mask at the bottom to darken those highlights, to darken that foreground so that you don't see the effect of the flash so much. Kind of erases the light hitting the foreground. And so that's essentially what we did there. I don't think I made a whole lot of other changes. But if we hit Y, that gives us before and after. We can kind of see now that our subject is brighter. it just pops a little bit more. The other thing I would say, and I've noticed this with my own shooting, as I've been shooting with like wide open primes, full body shots, the head tends to be to the top of a vertical frame. And I've noticed that when I'm shooting with like my 85-1.4 or my 51.2, that because of the natural vignetting wide open, the top of the head, even if the light was even, that vignetting is darkening the top and bottom of my frame. So something to be careful about, because we want that face to be the brightest part. A lot of times too, I'll ask the subject, hey, is that light hitting you? Like, oh yeah, it's right at my face. Cool, then I'll raise it another 2 feet. Because then just the bottom of my modifier is hitting their face, and then it feathers out instead of that center hitting and going all the way down. So I'm kind of feathering it past their body and face, so that it kind of runs past, and just that little bit more is hitting them and not so much body and legs. Just as a way to almost do what we're doing in post, but doing it physically with our light. Anyway, I really love this, Matty. Good shot. Shoot more like this. Love it. Oh, Steven. What kind of plane is this, Steven?
B-17.
B-17. Big plane. 4 props? Bomber? Bomber. That's wild. I love that if we zoom in here, right, if we can do our box zoom again, it's a JPEG, but you can see, like, there's enough detail. You can see the guy and the plane. It's really cool. And then what's with the smoke? Is that just the way it runs?
Nah, that was, they did the pretend bomb runs.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
they had pyrotechnics.
Gotcha. So we say we have kind of this blue sky behind, and then this, I don't know, some type of smoke, pyrotechnics, to get that black cloud. It kind of looks like it's running dirty. Also, notice the shutter speed here, 1/160th.
Is that a reaver? Huh? Is that a reaver?
He says, is it a reaver?
A reaver. What?
I don't know what it...
Firefly reference.
Oh, I got it now. No, but yes, I got what you're saying. I got it. But if we look at the props here, let me back up just a little bit. Right, it's not frozen, right? So we have that motion blur in the props. Same thing if you're shooting like a really fast car. You actually don't want to shoot at a fast shutter speed or too fast, because then the car just looks frozen on the track. And so doing it this way, it shows that motion of the plane. It works more like your eye would work, and you see, right? If we see a plane flying, a prop plane, we see the blur because our eye can't pick up each little motion, but our cameras can shoot much faster than our eye can see, and so you don't want it to look like an airplane model just hanging in the sky. So shooting with that slower shutter speed and kind of panning with it gets you those really cool kind of triangular prop. And then as you change, you can make more of that or less of that as you change your shutter speed. But the other cool thing it does, it softens up the background by shooting and panning a little bit. It makes that background not so soft, and then the plane is sharp, and so that gives you your contrast there. So in this case, it's a sharpness and detail contrast, not so much a color or a tonality contrast. So it's a sharpness contrast here. So I played with this. I don't think I did anything to it. I just brushed in a little bit of detail, and I just tried to make the plane stand out a little bit. Yeah, one little mask. I just did a little radial mask to add a little texture and clarity, just to make the plane pop a little bit more against the softness of the clouds. Because the clouds were soft, I wanted the plane to be even more textured, more soft. The plane to be more textured, more textury, just to give it a little bit more of that contrast. I played with the tone curve a little bit. I don't know that it really changed that much. Here's the before and after. It's not that different at all. Just played with the dehaze a little bit, but I don't know that mine's better. It's just something to do. I kind of like the softness and kind of the vintage feel that this has. Mine looks too much like me editing it, which is like turning everything up to 11. So a lot of times I'll turn things up all the way, and I'm like, oh yeah, back off a little bit. So I'll go to where it looks right and then back up a little. So that's usually the way I edit. But really good shot. This is Jibs on assignment, shooting a trail race. Let me show you his edit first. I kind of went backwards on this one because he sent me the RAW and the JPEG. So this is kind of what I'm talking about a little bit. I think you were shooting with the Tamron 70 to, yeah. And so it has a little bit of vignetting. So if we see the center part right here and the center part of that top of her quad right there is actually a little bit brighter than her face. Right, we want the reverse of that. We want your eye going to her face and her peace signs. What's up? Throw up gang signs. We want that a little bit more than we do on the quads, on the calves. But I think, right, the tone here, the warmth, I think that's good. You took a pretty wide shot and really brought it in. You're also shooting with what, like a 900 megapixel camera or something like that?
Yeah, it's like 24.
Oh, it's only 24?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so I took the same, this is the original on the left, and then this is my edit on the right. Just again, a radial, pretty hard radial this time, almost a stop darker. I edited this a lot like I would like an animal sport portrait, like a agility dog, where I do a real heavy vignette around the subject. I don't normally do that, but in this case, I really did. You can see how much this vignette's doing. That's without it, that's with it. I mean, that's a significant difference. But again, it all serves a purpose of bringing your eye to the subject, right? Getting it to the human. The other big thing I did here is color grading. Especially humans are red and orange. We just are. That's the color melanin. And then we're dealing with yellows and greens in nature, generally. Sometimes blues if there's a sky. And so I did a lot of split toning here. Take the overall, I didn't change the white balance, but just the overall midtones, yellow. I added some oranges and reds to the highlights. And then if we think of this teal color, it's kind of in between blues and greens, as a way to kind of soften up and amplify the shirt she's wearing, just as a way to kind of bring in those colors. Split toning also, and color grading, and then hit blending at 100. Split toning kind of softens up the image a little bit too. A lot of times when I'm editing my own trail racing photos, I go too crunchy. And so this was kind of it's not a better way to do it, it's just another way to do it. Jim's is probably actually closer to what I would deliver to the client. That's actually pretty close to what I would deliver to the client. Only thing I would do there is maybe brighten it up. I don't know, half stop. But that's typically the look I would give. And so I just tried a different way just to show another. I softened it up, right? I boosted the shadows, I killed the highlights. And so that brings the tonality closer together, right? It brings our shadows up and our highlights down so everything's flatter. And then by color grading, I softened up those transition zones again. So it just made it overall softer. And then that hard vignette gives me my contrast. So just another way to go about it. Again, not better, not worse, just another way to go about it. There are infinite ways to do this, right? There's infinite ways to do all that. So, yeah. So this is from Mark. So Mark's been to a couple of these. His wife is working on a movie, and I think they're in Prague right now. And so he was like, well, I'll just go out there, hang out with her for a couple months. So he's hanging out there. Also, I think working on a film set. Their Instagram's really fun to follow right now. They're getting all tattooed up, and it's cool. They have their little dogs with them walking around like all these like Eastern European countries. Pretty jealous. So he turned to me and said, well, I turned on my Josh Weird Mode dial, and I like this. This feels like the frames from Doctor Strange when they're in the mirror world, and like the world start, or like what was the Christopher Nolan one that did it as well? Not Tenet. Well, Tenet did it too, I guess. What's the one that go into dreams, into dreams, into dreams? Inception, right? Inception did this technique first, where it looks like the world's folding in on itself. And I think this is such an interesting way to look at a cityscape, right? Most people would say, oh, well, that's got to be vertical and that's got to be horizontal, and this is neither. But I think it makes it way more interesting to view. It almost looks like you're looking through 1/6 of a kaleidoscope, right? If you imagine a kaleidoscope having like, right, pieces of a pie of a Trivial Pursuit. Ooh, am I dating myself by throwing out that? Who, right, the little pieces of the pie, right? But it kind of has that feel where like you could imagine the rest, and because you could imagine that pattern repeating, it makes it more interesting, right? Because the viewer has to do work instead of everything being presented perfectly for them, right? So there's outside. This is outside a window, and so the window, instead of being kind of at an angle, the window itself is flipped. So I really dig it. It's just a cool way to look at the world in a different way. If I had to make one critique, the tips of this right there being clipped, I just would have liked maybe like 1% more, just so that tip there and then that tip there don't get clipped off. But otherwise, the idea was super cool and really fun. I really like this. So, good job, Mark. A lot of fun. I'm jealous of the life y'all are living right now. It looks amazing. Awesome. And this is from Jess. This is her first stab at product photography, which I think for a first go is really good. Background paper, I'm guessing mirrors, right, a mirrored surface. The first thing I noticed, I wish this photo was just a little bit more down and then opposite. So like, it bothers me that I don't see the bottom of the cap there. But I like how many there are, right? So it's the rule of odds. So it's kind of like a lead singer with a backing band, right? But there's 1 and 4. 1 and 4 is 5. Rule of odds, more interesting. Product photography is hard. It is definitely about controlling reflections and very minute movements. So we can see that something like a strip box was the main modifier with another softer. This looks like the white beauty dish maybe here with a softer softbox on this side, just by figuring out what the difference in the lighting was. Maybe there was just a reflector on that side. I'm not sure, but I think it's really good. Right, really good. This detail's great. This, even at f11 and as close as these were, that is definitely out of focus. That's one of the hard parts about product, is the depth of field starts getting like very crazy. So I really like the stark green against the color here. I just wish that the whole thing was like slightly down, because I think there's too much negative space at the top and then not enough at the bottom. I want to see it mirrored a little bit more. So, but I love the green, I love the whites, and then a polarizer is something that can help here to control reflections. Now, if you're on a tripod, what you can do, and we do this with car photos as well, which is just giant product photography, but for every good turn of the polarizer, and then layer mask each good turn so that your total reflections go down, right? So the turn on your polarizer to get this reflection gone might not help over here. And so it may take one for here, and then maybe one more. And then you could put those all together, layer mask them together, the good parts of all of them. That's why product photography is very time consuming, very difficult. But yeah, I love the kind of the pop of it. I know you sent more, but they're all kind of the similar, just really good, product on color. For a first stab, looks great. Ooh, Kira. So Kira, she was telling me what she was trying to do with this photo. What time of day was it at?
It was just after golden hour.
Just after golden hour.
Sun setting out.
Yeah, so you can kind of see that in right here in this background. So what she told me is, right, she's trying to get this neon here, light on them, gels on them, a lot going on here. So I think your first instinct was right. Back up, have them come away from it just a little bit. Now, that's good and bad. It's good for separating light, adding depth to your lighting so that you can have a light for your background, a light for your middle ground, a light for your foreground. The more depth you give, the easier it is to make that work, right? If you're up against a wall, you can't separate a light for the background, middle ground, foreground, right? So I think your idea to pull them forward so that you could light just them, where that light then doesn't get on the background, is a good instinct. The downside of that is your aperture becomes very important, because as you move them further away from that background, your same aperture is going to make that "it's your lucky day" sign blurrier, blurrier, and blurrier. So, this is where I would feather that light a whole bunch. To me, it's crazy how much you can feather light. I've had lights where it's 90 degrees from where you would think it would go, but by feathering that light as much as you can and just catching that little edge onto them allows that light not to hit the background.
Yeah, I think I started with a softbox, and then it spilled way too much on the background, and I ended up using just like a basic reflector.
Yeah.
I guess.
So softbox, but then, if it's normally supposed to be coming in this way, take it and we're just that little edge. As long as their face can see some shape of light, it'll get on them. The other thing you could do, if you had somebody, can't always do it, but you could flag your light. So put like a black cardboard in between the subject and the background so that the light gets blocked from hitting the wall. In this case, feathering probably is your first choice. because I think moving them back, the issue then becomes that sign starts to get very blurry. Yeah. Now you could start, you know,
Increasing my aperture.
yeah, but then that starts throwing in a lot more other problems. So, and then I really like the blue on his face. I know you said you don't love it, but I like it.
Yeah,
Like
I have those problems sometimes with gels. It's like I don't really always want it on their faces, and it's hard to avoid like this kind of.
so I think.
Kind of initially backlight it, but then it was still slipping out to the sign area.
Yeah, this is where like a boom arm, like so you could get it like up above behind them, so it hits all their shoulders. That's really hard to carry around, although on set. But something where it's coming more at their edges. But I like the way this shadow hits the collar here. I think that with the warm tones of their skin really is great. Guys at a wedding are just fashion accessories anyway, so I wouldn't worry about their faces. As long as you make sure the feminine person looks great, the masculine person can look however they want. It's less important. They're just there to be someone for the woman to lean on. So I did make one change or two changes. Your lines were bothering me because they weren't quite straight, and so I straightened them up. And then I did same thing, select subject on them, and just soften them up. I decreased the contrast on them, duplicated it, and then darkened the background. And so that kind of removes the effect of the light hitting that as well by just darkening the background so you don't see it as much. So, but really great one to kind of talk about and think about. What was your focal length about? Do you know?
It wasn't very. It was like probably 2.8 or something.
No, focal, not aperture.
Oh, I was at a 50.
50,
That was
yeah.
what I had in my pocket. I wanted to go get my 85, but it was all the way back in everybody.
Sure. No, I get it. The things we want to do, the things we have time and energy to do at a wedding are very different. Yeah, I get
This
it.
is my last shot. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So this one's also from Jess, right? Couple in blue bonnets. Apparently she delivered the photos, they paid her, and then they broke up.
Oh no.
So that'll happen in like a week. But again, I think we have a blue kind of green gel hitting on this side. We can kind of see it underneath the neck there. So good job using gels. And then I'm guessing a white beauty dish on here because that's also her favorite modifier. But I like that it's not spilling everywhere. It's very focused on them. I bet it has a grid on it as well. So a beauty dish with a grid to get it just on our subject and not everywhere. Think about a softbox would just throw light everywhere, but this is just on our subjects. So I like the way they're locking arms, get down low in the blue bonnets, heads above the horizon. I think that's all really good. I don't know. I may crop in like here because we're kind of chopping off the feet there. Right, see the feet kind of right there. So I might bring in just a little bit like that, just to kind of make them a little bit more, right. I think that's just a little more impactful. But again, I warmed up their skin tones a little bit, brightened up the shadows just a touch, not a touch, like a lot, 55. But I think I just did a radial here. So this is how I would used to do it. Oh no, I didn't. I did a select subject because select subject is awesome. But you can also do a radial just around them to kind of give that vignette. But the way that the beauty dish and the vignette work together, it kind of creates it with lighting instead of having to do it in post. So, yeah, good stuff. All right. Aw. If you don't see this photo, say, "Oh, I don't know what's wrong with you." Oh, this is from Tiffany. We're just with Tiffany doing the Marion 10 again. You're right. Soft babies. I'm glad somebody's shooting babies because I don't want to shoot babies anymore. Also, don't say you shoot babies. But this just a nice natural light. Now there may be a little. What do you think? We think there's a little light. Yeah, I bet there's a little reflector just kind of off to up and to the right. Just really pretty. Just be careful right here where toes get chopped off. Especially when we're shooting for clients. Cameras are 3x2, and most people would print this as an 8x10. And so I've got burned on this shooting group photos for weddings, full body portraits. We tend to want to get it so right in camera, and then they go to make an 8x10, and they're chopping people off. Why we still use 8x10 prints, I don't know. Nobody has shot with an 8x10 camera in like 50 years. I mean, some people do, but the majority of photos taken, I bet, are 3x2 by a wide majority. So, right, if I went to make this into an 8x10, let's see what we lose here. Yep. So we really start getting really close to the hairline and really close to the toe line. So I would just say that as you're shooting full body portraits, be very careful of, give yourself a little bit extra room so that you can crop. Also, if you need to spin it a little bit, be very, very careful. So otherwise, beautiful. Good job. All right, last photo of the day. We got a puppy in a field of wildflowers. So Tiffany told me, she was like, this was in the parking lot next to, not a Buc-ee's, but like a gas station basically, and just like in a little strip of field. She shot this with her 135 f2, just wide open. Get that nice like blur in our foreground, sharp to our subject, blur in the background. Really nice expression of our subject here. Nice hand placement. All that's really, really beautiful. The way this light really just comes across from the cheek to the shadow, it's great. The one thing I would say, I wish the dog was also looking at us. So if the dog was either looking at the owner or the dog was looking at the photographer, but her eyes looking at me and the dog's eyes looking across kind of are split. And so either both, a lot of times when I'm doing pet portraits, I say look wherever the animal's looking. And then that way it kind of goes together more, and you can't control where the dog is. So it's easier to control the human than the animal. We do a lot of horse and rider portraits. Random, but just say, look wherever the horse is looking, look in the same direction. Instead of trying to get the horse to match the rider, you let the rider match the horse. So same here. Try to get the dog to look where the person's looking, or instruct the person to look the same direction the dog's looking. And that just kind of gives a more naturalistic feel, because it's kind of a little bit disconcerting that they're looking their lines cross. Yeah. But otherwise, everything about this is beautiful. I didn't change anything else about it. So, good job. That's it. That's all we got. What do you think?
Alright.
Any comments? Anything from the peanut gallery? Whew. Good.
Inverting filters. I've never thought to do that in Lightroom for some reason.
Never done what?
Just inverting the filters, like doing the subject one and then just inverting it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the way to go. Because it creates an exact opposite. Yeah, that's the way to go. Now, you could go back and paint in a little transition zone. I would get your first layer right exactly where you want it, because that way when you duplicate it, it's exactly opposite. But if you make changes afterwards, it starts to get a little off. Yeah. Any other comments from the peanut gallery? Anything else? All good? I know I'm a stickler on vertical lines, though. I know. That's what we do. All right. Well, guys, next month we'll do another one here in June. Come join us at Three-Legged Goat. I'll buy you a beer. Come hang out with us. Talk to y'all soon.
Might have some Milky Way ones in that one.
I know.